Hello, everyone, and welcome to our lunchtime chat. When we think about our products, most of us do not think about the carefully crafted words that are meant to make them stand out. And what about a brand's image? Does that even matter nowadays? We used to gravitate towards products that had scientific sounding ingredients, and now everyone is saying, if I can't eat it, then I don't want it on my body. It's time to get a pulse on branding and marketing of current products, and that is what is on today's chat. My name is Dr. Crystal Porter, and I'm a hair scientist and owner of Main Insights, a company that conducts research and focuses on the needs of Black hair care, or needs of Black women, and from people of African descent. This platform is designed to elevate the Black hair care industry and empower consumers and hair practitioners with education that is driven and backed by scientific research. Before we get started, I'd like to know who is out there with me today. If you are a practitioner, put the number 1 in the chat. If you are a consumer, put the number 2. And if you are a researcher or scientist, such as myself, put the number 3. Also, don't be stingy. Make sure that you share this broadcast. So, if you are frustrated with the lack of information available to you when it comes to caring for your hair, or you've wasted a lot of money, time, and resources trying to figure things out on your own, then you are in the right place. And that is why we have created the Our Black Hair Matters movement. And for those of you who may just now be joining, I just want to let you know I have a very valuable resource that you can get. It's called The 3 Biggest Mistakes to Avoid When Caring for Your Curly Hair. You can go to obhm.com, ourblackhairmatters.com, and you should see that there in the chat. And also, if you have a pressing concern or you need to have a conversation with someone, our team is standing by, and you can schedule a 15-minute complimentary consultation by going to bit.ly/OBHM consult. And you should see that right there on the screen. All right, it is time to jump in. So I can't help but notice that there are many small businesses that want to jump into the hair product space, but they don't want to sell existing products. They want to come up with their own formulations. And in this crowded space, there needs to be a strategy to even compete. So when I met Desiree Reid, who is today's guest, and then I heard about her background, I knew that she had to join. And so she is going to shed some light on the allure of hair care products and beauty products in general. So, Desiree, thanks for
Hi,
joining.
thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I want to go ahead and introduce you. And so I have put together some information. So Desiree Reid is a global brand strategist and CEO of Desiree Reid and Company. She is an organizational development consultant in the US, Europe, Africa, and South America. And she is a lead educator at the Hopin Class New York. She has expertise in creating and managing the entire ecosystem of strategic direction, and she finds the right tools and specialists to enable team implementation. She develops strategies across everything from operational and product development to marketing, merchandising, and sales. And in her past life, she spent over 2 decades as a general manager and executive vice president of brand development of Iman Cosmetics. Welcome.
Thank you. That about
Awesome.
covers most of it.
And feel free to add anything else that you think you want to highlight.
Well, I have actually over close to 40 years experience in beauty, which is when I think about it, is a bit crazy.
Wow.
Started my career at Revlon in product development, so worked with scientists my entire career. Um, Worked in fragrance, so worked with perfumers. So it's always been the blend of product development, marketing, and the science of it. So um, it's helped me understand that what I call the 360 of beauty. So
Okay.
over the years, and then Iman Cosmetics, I managed all of those steps, from conceptualizing to getting it out the door.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been fun. A lot of changes in the industry over the years, but hair has always been um, the biggest of the pie when it comes to women of color and African and curly hair and melanin women. Hair has always been where beauty for the general market was where the profits were for a very long time. It was like we were only about our hair. Then you were like, well, we've got skin, we've got fragrance, we've got body, we've got everything else, but hair has been a big part of this the industry's growth for um, African American women in general across the world, actually. So it's nice to be here talking about it on a new level.
Awesome. Yeah. So I just want to recognize the people who have joined on the chat, and I can actually see everyone's name today. I'm so excited about that. So, hello, Taria. Thanks for joining. Lazan is here. She says, congratulations. We are about to learn. Yes, absolutely. And then Perdita is here. Hello, Judy is here. And so, welcome. All right. So we're going to dive in because I have a lot of questions for you. And so one of the things that I wonder about, because when I first started in the cosmetic industry, I was told consumers just buy based on emotion, right? And so logic, what I was taught was is not important, you know? And so I want to know from your perspective, is that true? And have we evolved past, sleek packaging and pretty pictures? Or what is the state now?
Well, in all honesty, for women of color, it was never really pretty packaging and everything because there wasn't that many options. So to say that it was emotional buying, I think for us it was a combination of emotion and logic at the same time. Now we are so much more educated and so much more evolved in the area of our own hair because at some point there was a switch. The narrative changed where the big companies were telling us what products were good for our hair. We started creating products that were good for our hair. You had like Miss Jessie years ago who came out with, the first really talking about you can wear your hair natural and it can be healthy and it can be beautiful and it can grow and it can be represent who you want it, who you are. We no longer had to relax our hair to be accepted as, your hair is in good condition or your hair looked a certain way. There was a certain level of freedom that came about once we changed the narrative. So it became more emotional because we got emotional about it because we were upset. My hair's breaking. I don't want to relax my hair anymore. I don't want to color my hair. So the narrative changed because of the emotional connection that we took in our hair. So we had to change the narrative. The logic came into play more when we started looking more into, well, what are the proper ingredients? What are the proper textures for our hair? And we then combined the emotional elements with the logic and the science and the packaging. But most importantly, we got logical about the ingredients that were put in our hair. We started to dig a little deeper, looking at what is this and going back and saying, oh, well, this is not really something that is good for my hair. We never really dug deep until we started changing the narrative ourselves. And we had people like Miss Jessie and other brands who came along and said, listen, I put together Carol's Daughter. I made a formula and it was completely different than what's been sold to us before. And it worked and it made our hair look great. And we started to engage with those brands and we started to try and we started to and listen to the narrative. And then the bigger companies saw that there was a movement. But until we changed the narrative, they weren't going to change the narrative to suit us. And I think that's what's happening across beauty with the diversity. the narrative is now being controlled by the consumer, which is very important to understand that.
Yeah. So speaking of, the narrative being controlled by the consumer, one of the things that I'm seeing now is people want to explore why. And the answer to that question isn't readily available. They want to know why something works. And it's almost as though we're having what I'm calling a more sophisticated consumer. They want to
Absolutely.
know more. They're looking and they're searching on Google, and the information just isn't there.
Because I think you and I had the discussion when it comes to our hair and skin and stuff like that, the data over the years wasn't collected in the way that they collected the data for what they call the general market consumer. Now, the general market consumer is kind of switched. I mean, 60% of the world has
Mhm.
hair.
Mhm.
So who's really the general market? And I think that's what you're looking for. And what you found is that and I've worked in product development, and most of the times when products were developed, it was that consumer was the tail end. Oh, if we did a shampoo or if we did a makeup, oh, we need to make sure we have at least one or two products that's attractive. And it wasn't specially designed. I think what you're seeing now is much, much more the age of personalization, where we've tried a lot of things and we know a lot of things, and we bring some things with us from our cultures. People are now talking about coconut oil and shea butter and vitamins. We've always had those as part of our routines, as part of our culture. And what we're seeing now with those things being brought to the forefront in product development for there. But there's still a long way to go on, especially things like what you do. Our hair may look alike, but it doesn't actually function the same way. You know, what I use for my hair may not work for your hair. And it's a trial and error that we go through. And as you said before, it costs us a lot of money. So I think what you're seeing now with social media, with influencers, with people like you, with the science being so much more important, that brands almost have to give the consumer more insights on the products that they're developing. Where did it derive from? Is it sustainable? How long can I use it? How much should I be using of it? So the formulations itself now have to be, as they say, cleaner, more transparent. And that's the result of social media. That's the result of us being able to change the narrative. So if you look now, when brands launch a product, they'll want to tell you the packaging is recyclable, the ingredients come from here. If we took a tree, we put back a tree. This is its origin, this is its makeup, this is how much you have the optimum amount to use, and we've used it in our products. They give you a lot more of that information, but it will always be where you will have to try a product and to really understand if it works for you. And where you a lot of things that women should take into consideration. Where you live has a very important role in the products you buy for your hair. The climate that you are in, the water that you're using. So you yourself need to have an understanding of those things before you actually go and buy a product. We buy our products emotionally. Somebody gets on an influencer, say, "Oh, look what my hair," and and we're quick to put it in our cart. I'm guilty of it too, I'll have to say. And then I try it. I'm like, I've spent half the time in a climate that's really, really hot. This product is not moisturizing enough. So I think we ourselves have to do a little bit more research on the products before we go diving in as well. Because
Oh,
no, the information is not readily there.
but I am so glad you said that. I have said for a while now, people don't consider those simple things. Well, I shouldn't say they're simple. People just don't know about it. But you're right, the climate, the water. With me being here in Chicagoland, we have unfortunately one of the hardest waters, like of any major metropolitan area in the US. The water is
Right.
really hard. So people come here and they complain about how their skin is really dry. And I mean, now we do have low humidity that feeds into that as well.
Hmm.
But the water itself isn't helping. And so you're absolutely right with the hair, because I like going to other places and
Yes.
actually cleansing my hair, because the experience that I get is, I use less product. It's a number of
Yes.
things that, I'm able to manipulate my hair better. It's just,
Right.
more supple. So,
Yeah, the level of pollution and things like that. So I think it's very, very important for the professional like yourselves and the practitioners to understand that when they're introducing their products to clients.
mhm,
Um, we're very, very much influenced by influencers, and stuff like that. But it's important that, yes, they say that that product works great for them, but they may live in a completely different climate. The pollution, the water may be different. So you want to do a little bit of your own understanding. And that's why I think we end up spending so much money, because that emotional purchase, we should take a step back and say, okay, it sounds good, but let me dig a little bit and see what people are saying who lives in Chicago or who lives somewhere else and using it and saying, well, it didn't work as well for me, or it worked really, really well for me, and I'm this and that. I think it's important. We have to be our own, um, like they use Cy Sims used to say, an educated consumer is our best customer. And I love that line, because you have to be educated about your products yourself.
yeah,
Because let's face it, we're all in marketing. We're trying to sell something. That's what marketing is, right? It's
right.
that's the bottom line.
So, back in the day, we used to gravitate towards ingredients that I would say were specially formulated to function in a desirable way. So, for example, if we wanted our hair to like have hold, it was, chemistry was used. So, I mean, people are saying, oh, no chemicals, but I mean, everything is a chemical, but that's neither here nor there. But when we move or gravitate more towards natural ingredients and whatever is clean beauty, and maybe you can shed some light on that, we don't get the same benefits that we would get if we used products that were formulated in the unique way. I think it's challenging to a lot of the chemists out there that make formulations to take a natural ingredient and just have it perform in a particular way. For example, humidity. Everybody wants humidity resistance. We don't want our hair to, swell up and get frizzy. So, what is your take on that trend? And if you feel that people would choose functionality over having something natural?
You know what? It's from what I've seen, it's gonna be a personal choice. Natural products are not new to us in really. We've used natural products. We've created them in our kitchens, and it really is it's like eating meat and not eating meat, right? There's some advantages and disadvantages of both. So I think it's really a personal preference. You have to understand that if you use an all natural products, there are certain limitations. Um, Even the lifetime, the lifespan of that product changes slightly, and there are natural things now, natural preservatives and more things that can be used. But from a chemical standpoint, I think it's good in a way, because it's a challenge the formulators to really, really look at some of these natural ingredients and how you can recreate them in a way that you get all of the benefits of them, but you don't necessarily always have to cut a tree or do a plant or something like that. So there's lots of ways in science that you can duplicate the benefits of a natural ingredients as well, and combine it with natural ingredients to make it more functional and more optimum. But I think things like paraben, you can definitely do without. And we've known that you can do without those things and still have great products. But it really is going to come down to a personal preference. I go between. I go between. There are some products that I like to be very clean and natural, like maybe my shampoo or my conditioner. But products that I have to leave on my hair that has to do a little bit more work, I probably would go with a combination of both, where there's some naturals and there's some other ingredients that maybe help penetrate a little bit more and things like that. So as long as the chemical products such as relaxers and all of that, I'm not talking about those because those are just chemicals. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. You know what I'm saying? But shampoos and conditioners, things like that, the combination of the natural and I don't want to say chemical based because when you say chemical, it gives almost a negative impact. But I will say technological designed products because people don't know you can take a plant and recreate that plant all of its benefits without actually using the plants. And then lots of time, that's what scientists and formulators are looking for. And people who develop, listen, the earth can only support us but so much, right? There's land and water is, we think it's plentiful, but it's not. So you have to figure ways also that you can get from the environment without taking from the environment. So there are definitely scientific ways that you can do that. So, I mean, when you're buying your products, if that is a concern for you, that's information that you can definitely find out. But I would have to say the combination of technically advanced ingredients, not chemical ingredients, and natural ingredients are what you're finding becoming more and more popular, where they're derived from.
I'm glad you said because as a chemist, I am
Yeah.
really support. I mean, I support using the word chemical, especially when it comes to describing the hair care industry, because so many people think that that's taboo and everything is a chemical. So thank you for
Yeah, and
clarifying that.
everything chemical, it doesn't necessarily always mean
Bad.
chemicals in that sense, because I know working in the fragrance industry, working in beauty, there are things that are actually derived from using natural ingredients that they recreate with other ingredients to give you the benefits without having to actually use that. And that's become more and more popular. People are looking at sandalwood and the benefits of sandalwoods and how and recreating it in a way because some of these ingredients that we love, for instance, people don't understand black castor oil. Castor oil is a very difficult thing to grow, especially like a Jamaican black castor oil. You gain very little out of those beans. It takes a lot to do, but combined with other things and recreated the benefits of it, you can definitely come up with something as good as castor oil that is good and sometimes even can be even better for your hair. So I wouldn't always say chemical. Ooh, I think you need to understand what that means for that particular product. It's not blank across the board. Definitely not.
So I want to say, so there's someone who comes up as Facebook user. So no, LinkedIn, I'm sorry, LinkedIn user. Hello, glad to be here. So glad to have you here. So I apologize that I can't see your name. Taria says she finds herself gravitating towards natural ingredients for her hair. The LinkedIn user says, yes, science recreating these properties can be a more sustainable option. Absolutely. Also long term at least. And then water is a chemical. Yes, thank you. And then Taria says that's good to know. Awesome. So I want to ask a question that is based on how many hair practitioners in particular are coming out with their own products, right? And so you can have two different companies or formulators sell the exact same formula, right? They come up with the exact same formula or they sell it.
Mhm.
So say they white label it or private label it. And they have different success rates with them selling the same exact product. So I want to know from your experience, besides money, because we know that if you put a lot of money towards advertising, you're going to get sales. But besides advertising, are there any other strategies or ways that someone can have success with sales? So to increase sales besides throwing money at ads.
It's interesting because I teach workshops. I teach these workshops, and one of the workshops that I teach is understand what you're selling. Okay. And I think what happens, and I see it all the time, is somebody says, practitioner says, oh, I want to do a hair product. And the first thing they do is they develop a product. And then they go backwards and say, well, what does this product do? And that is not where you start. So even if you are going to a subcontractor and you're going to buy a product or you're going to develop a person, before you even get to that stage, there are some basic things that you need to think about for success of your brand, right? Things like, what are the needs of the women that you're going to be talking to? You can't develop the products and then find those consumers. You need to understand that first. And if you have a practice, you're ahead of the game because you know what your clientele is coming in for. You know what kind of products they're looking for. So you start there. You first decide, because every product must satisfy your need. And to satisfy that need, you must know what that need is first. Some idea of what they're willing to pay for it, right? How they expect you to deliver it to them. And all of this stuff, it sounds like it's a lot and it sounds like it's hard, but it's not. But I find so many times people come to me and say, I have a product. Now I want to sell it. And I'm like, no, you should have thought about that first. Where do you want to sell it? Because we say we want to sell it in Target. You have no control of that. Target decides if your brand aligns with their audience, their price point. And these are all of the things you want to think about before. And it's really just a matter of taking time to sit down and say, okay, this is my audience. This is the problem that they have. These are the kind of products that I'd like to develop for them. And these are the kind, do your research. And these are the ingredients that I have used or I know of, or I'm working with a chemist that can say. And then it's easier for me to come to you as a formulator and say, okay, I want to do a hair product for women who have extra dry hair, right? And they're suffering from dry scalp. And I want it to feel like this, and I want it to, it's much easier for the chemist to say, I know how to formulate that product, rather than going to the chemist and saying, oh, I want a product that's for dry hair. Yeah, he'll give you a product for dry hair, but what texture of hair are you looking for? And then you go back and say things like, well, do you want a clean product? Do you want a product that's natural? Do you want a product? There are lots of questions that you need to answer yourself before you actually make that product. So once you've done that and you've gotten this product, it's easy now for you to design everything else, because the look and feel of the package will all be dictated by a lot of those things that you've done and put together before. Because you will be thinking about the kind of colors that I want. It needs to align with the formula. Is it going to be a recyclable bottle? All of these things are what comes into play afterwards. So when you come to me now as a marketing person and I say to you, okay, so who's your audience? What's your ingredient story? What's your price point? What is your story? It's easier for me to go and find your audience because you've already created them for me. And I think the process of doing the product first and then going to find the audience, it's longer and it's more expensive. And I think people get frustrated, and I see clients have done this over and over again, and or they add a new product and they add a new product before really stepping back and say, am I really serving the audience that I think I'm serving? And it's so as soon as somebody asks me that question and say, you're starting in the wrong place. And that's what I find happens with most of my clients. They come to me and they say, I've developed this product and it's great. Okay, so what? That's what I really say. So what? There's so many great products on there that people never know about. Who was it for? What is your ingredient story? What's your message? because we can find your audience, but you have to know who your audience really is, because it's a huge marketplace and you want to find your little niche in that place. And your conversation has to make sense to that particular niche that you're talking about. So it's important, um, to save money, to save time, because formulating a product. I had a client who formulated a product, and I said to her, "Well, is it a clean product? Because if whatever clean means doesn't may not you may think it doesn't matter, but to a consumer it may matter." And she's like, "Oh, I didn't think." So she had to go back to the formulator. Is my formula clean? No, not quite. We have to remove this and we have to remove that. Those are things you consider prior to, right?
So what is clean? And so wait, you as you're talking, I have so many questions in my head. But
Clean is,
let's
I usually define clean by the where ingredients originate from, the sustainability of the products. But if you really want to know, when you're developing a product, if you're going to a product that cleans, I would say people like Sephora and Ulta and Target all have a clean beauty disclaimer. So if you're developing a product and your intention is that you want to be in the clean beauty, this stuff exists out there. There is, if you go on Google and say, what is a clean shampoo? What is a formula? There are basic formulas out there. It's not this whole clean beauty thing. It's not a hidden secret, right? So everybody may define it quite differently, according to their product and product form, but it exists. And if it's basic, it's almost like you don't need to talk about it anymore. You don't, paraben free and all of that stuff. It's become standard. If you have those things in there, you're looking at a market that's not even going to look at you, right? If you're in skincare or hair care and you're really doing this natural and stuff and it's not clean, then you're talking to you've lost a huge portion of the audience that's talking. So it's important that I say to people, consider this stuff, because things like what your packaging is depends on what your formulator is. The texture of your product determines the orifice size of the stuff that you're using. Is it in a jar? Is it in a pump? Are these things recyclable? So many things that your consumer is aware of. You have to be. Think of it as you're a consumer. Forget that you're a practitioner. Forget that you're an expert. Think of the things that you think about when you want to buy your product. What do you look at? You look at the packaging, you read the ingredients, you go and you look at all of those things will apply to your product. People do the exact same thing. So pretend you're a customer wanting to buy a product from yourself. What would you look for? What would you want to see? And make sure that those things are there, because it's important, especially if the product comes from you, right? Because it's about your expertise, your insight, and your knowledge that you're putting into this bottle. So you have to be able to talk about it in a way that's authentic. Um, and then, there's lots of things, tests that you can do, claims to make your claims and all of that stuff. But all of that has to be thought about in the initial, before you even make a product. What claims do you want to make? Because if I don't tell you as a formulator what claims I need to make, you won't know what level of ingredients and what ingredients will give me those claims.
yeah.
So it's a lot to think about. And so when I develop these workshops, it's a lot of them is about, it's not a webinar where I tell you, oh, you have to do this, you have to do this. A lot of it is really about giving you awareness and understanding of what you're getting, how you go through the process without. And I've been through the process and I've done it right and I've done it wrong. So it's now a combination of these are the things, no matter what you're doing, you have to think about them, at some point in your brand development.
Yeah. So I want to jump to consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of what you said is like in my mind. So The one thing is we focused heavily on natural and clean beauty, right? However, there is a segment out there like me who, as long as I feel, as long as the product is safe and meaning that the person who makes it has gone through their due diligence and making sure, all the
Mm-hmm.
microbial
Mm-hmm.
testing and
Mm-hmm.
stability testing, all of that is done. I want something that works. And it
Right.
doesn't necessarily have to be natural. It doesn't necessarily have to be clean because we've been cleansing our hair for centuries. And a lot of, if you do your due diligence, you're using products that aren't harmful. And so, what about the consumer in terms of what they should consider when looking at marketing and branding? What would be right for them? Um, so, especially Black consumers, because I feel that we are, oh no, I don't feel. There's data out there that actually
Mhm.
shows that out of all the type of consumers,
Oh
women
my
of
God, we spend
color who
more.
are Black,
We
w-
spend the most money.
we spend the
We
most money, but we're the
index,
most unsatisfied. We
and that's
aren't
my point.
satisfied.
We spend the most money. We index 110, 120% over every other consumer. We have more products in our
Arsenal.
on our dresses, in our cabinets than any other product.
Yeah,
When it comes to makeup, when it comes to skincare, when it comes to hair, and yet still we're not satisfied,
exactly.
right? We're not satisfied because
So, yeah,
at the end of the day, a lot of the products that are there are not necessarily designed for you. They may work. I mean, let's face it, we've been using products. I've been using moisturizers and cleansers my entire life. They weren't necessarily designed for me. It was trial and error, right? I used the product and it worked and things like that. So I think again, it goes back to don't chase the shiny, as I say, because not everything that's expensive necessarily is better than something else. And first, I think everyone should understand that every single product that's on the market must meet FDA standards. There's stability testing. There is testing not just on the product has to be tested within the component. There's something on there that calls open jar. A lot of people doesn't know what that means. That means once you've opened that product, that's the lifespan of that product. It's important to look at that. But it's very important to understand that all of the products that are on the market, 99% of them, a few will get through for people who are mixing things in their garages and selling them out. But branded products have a very stringent testing. Every time an ingredient, if they make that product 100 times, every time they get that ingredient, it has to be tested that it meets the standards that was set. So it's very difficult to say there's a bad product or a product on the market that's not doesn't meet the standard. It may not work for you. The ingredients you may not like, but all of those products are tested. So what it comes down to, again, is the knowledge of those things. And you have to read the labels, right? So somebody may say that this product is good for you, it is great, but you've got to again understand your skin type, your hair type, and look at the labels and just dig a little deeper into what, because marketing is about the messaging and getting the story out and the narrative. It's us to us as consumers as to sometimes look beyond that and say, if you just spent $50 on a product, you want to think about it before you go spend another $50 on another product, right?
right.
And then what happens, you look at the two labels and you find that the same thing was in that one is in this one, and you went by emotions or what somebody else said. So
Yeah. So, and I think what you're saying is, so I want to put it in context. So, two things. The first thing is you talking about the ingredients being the same. I one thing that I learned by working very closely with formulators at both Unilever and L'Oreal, um, is that the way that the product is made really dictates its, or can heavily dictate how it performs. So you can
And
have.
and that goes back to my development. When I talk about development, you have to know how you want a product to perform, and the end results and the claims, so that that product can be formulated to meet that. You can't do it the other way around. It just does not work. So you've got to understand what you want your hair to do, or what you want your skin to look, and find those products with the ingredients that perform those things.
Now, the other thing that you were saying, and it's interesting because I was so spoiled and I was in my own little bubble. I didn't realize it until I came out of the bubble. But when I was in, big corporations, I took for granted that I thought all the products out there were like doing what they were supposed to do. What I have learned is that a lot of hair practitioners, for example, they are mixing things, in the back room, or maybe they're going to a manufacturer that's making their product, and they don't ask the questions as to whether or not they're, doing the right things. Are they actually formulating with good manufacturing practices, for example?
Right.
And yeah, it's unbelievable how many products are being sold in very pretty packaging, and they've been out for decades, and they don't know about product testing. They haven't done it. And I'm just, I was amazed when I first found out about it. So you were saying that, most of the products on the market are, meet those
Have to
standards,
go. Yeah.
but that's not the truth, because the FDA
That's what I said. I
doesn't.
said 99% of them, especially the bigger branded one, but there's a
Right, the big brands.
percentage out there. And I know, for example, a brand that was very, very popular, I won't say its name, and it was doing very, very well. And it was bought by a major company, which you're aware of. And they had to change all the formulas because the
Oh yeah,
formulas weren't stable. So,
yeah.
these smaller brands that are coming up, that are, where somebody says, that's that 1% that I'm talking about. Those are the ones you have to really, really be careful about. So when you're looking at them, yes, their products may work, but again, dig a little deeper. Are they are their ingredients meeting the claims that you want? Do you even know the ingredients that are going into these things? You've got one or two people who say, "Oh yeah, I use it and it's great," and you start a trend. And social media is very easy to get things moving sometimes, that without all of that backup that you would want. I always say, start with the ones that are, for instance, like a brand, like you've got issues with your skin, start with a brand like Neutrogena, things like that. Because Neutrogena and those guys, they do a lot of testing.
Yeah.
And they may not always show it, but they test on a wide variety of skin. So if you're having some serious issues with your hair, with your skin, don't always just trust a brand that you can't really go and do a lot of research, but somebody said, "Oh, it worked for me and it was great." That's to me becomes where the influencer and the social media can go array. Because you take that advice and all that person can say, "Oh well, I tried it and it worked for me," or "I did it and it worked for me." Where if you're working with a company, if something doesn't work, you can go back to them, and they have to either pull that product, they have to investigate what went wrong, to kind of look at, is there more people having these issues and stuff like that. So, there's a fine line, but 99% of the brands that are out there that are branded products, who are, in these particular retailers or are sold on certain online, have to go through these procedures, because the retailer and the online platform requires that they have it.
A
MSDS
lot of
sheets. People don't
consumers.
understand there's something called a material safety data sheet. Every single company must have a material safety data sheet for every ingredient that goes into a product. So, when you go to develop your own, whether it's starting from scratch, where all of these things you would have to know and do yourself, or whether it's going to a subcontractor who already has formulas, you want to know that they have their MSDS sheets. They can. There's no sensitivity to ingredients that they have. Have they done their stability testing? Have they done claims testing? Because people, want to say, "Oh, my product does this." But if somebody comes and says, "Prove that," do you have proof that that test was done to substantiate that claim? People can't just say things. And I think if you know anything about marketing, you will see people say reduce the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. There's a difference than saying getting rid of fine lines and wrinkles.
Yep.
When you go that far, it's a completely different substantiation that you have to make.
Yeah.
Like SPF, you can't say your product has an SPF in there. Even if it has the ingredients of SPF, you can't claim any kind of protection until you have made a test that substantiates that. It's important to know these little things and how they play in. And again, they go back to before you formulate a product, what do you want it to do? Who is it for? How do you want it to function? Right? Because as you said, you're looking for a product that does a certain function when you go. You're looking for a product to satisfy a certain need. And when you're developing product, that's before anything else, a good product satisfies a need in a way that even if it came in an ugly container or everything else, the end of the day, the product inside is good. So you're like, you see people say, I've been using this product for years, and you look at it, you go, oh, but it works. So don't always
Right.
get fooled by the packaging being pretty and stuff like that. You're right. Functionality. Does it deliver on what it says?
Right. So it used to be that a hair practitioner would do someone's hair in the salon and the hair would feel great, and they would have products that were already pre-made, so they weren't mixing things
Mhm.
in the back room themselves. They found products that worked, and they could make money by selling those products to consumers. So even if they are stirring up their concoctions in the back, they can sell their products based on how the consumer or their client left the salon. They're like, oh, I want to
Right,
have this
right,
product so I
right,
can try to create this at home.
right.
So, do you think that there is a better way to do it in your experience? Because you have, like I said, a lot of entrepreneurial spirits out there who want to have their own product, but then there are perfectly good products out there already. And so, from your experience, can you talk about that a little bit in terms of the
It,
pros and
it
cons
really
of
comes.
both?
There's okay. The pros of going to somebody with a. First of all, let me say this: any kind of product development and launching a product requires funding, whether you're buying it from somebody else or whether you're creating it yourself. So understand, first of all, what that budget looks like for you. What do you really have to spend to do this? And I think sometimes people think about, oh, I have to have 3 or 4 products. Many brands have started with one really good product that works. So you may have somebody who has a great oil that they've concocted up, they've mixed up. I have a skincare oil that I've mixed for myself, right? And I've given it to people and they love it. If I wanted to go and do that product now, I know all of the ingredients that go in. I wouldn't feel the need to have to do anything else to go with it. You don't have to have this 7 product launch. Pick some key products. If your practice focuses on women who have hairs breaking and you have a product that you've used and it really, really works, start there. Start with having one great product that satisfies a need, because you can always recommend that they use this and they use this with your product, and eventually you can expand your product line. If you take the route of going to somebody who already has a formula that needs to be done, there's a cost associated to that. And it's probably, I would say, the least expensive way to start, because they will have done, if you've asked the right questions, they will have done all of the testing. And sometimes they have formulas that they can tweak slightly to compensate for some of the things that you may want. So they may have a really great shampoo for dry hair, but you say, well, I specifically like this, and this ingredient to make it mine. And then you have a story, even though that product may be coming, 90% of that product may be coming off the shelf. Some of them will tweak it slightly so that you have a point of difference to your stuff. And they usually provide you with a standard bottle, maybe some choices. Everything depends on cost. They can do the labeling for you, which is great, because all of these things on your own take time and money. And I find that it's where startups can sometimes get lost or stuck, right? Because you have to buy the label, you've got to put the label on, you've got to source the bottles, and there's minimum order quantities that you usually cannot meet. You don't want to buy 5,000 pieces of a bottle to get 100 products. You just don't. Even 1,000 to get one. So these guys usually allow you to do smaller quantities and smaller sizes within there. They can do the labeling for you. They can give you all the paperwork, because at the end of the day, you're not a formulator, right? I'm not a formulator. I work with formulators all the time. I'm a marketer. So I don't want to put my energy and stuff into something that I'm not the expert in. Your goal is you are delivering these products. You are then become the marketer. You want to market your products. So that's where your effort and time needs to go into, with the help of your formulator. They'll tell you what your ingredient stories are, what kind of claims that you can make. So I would say that's the most efficient way if you're starting. And start with 1 or 2 products. Don't go out and do this 7 products, 6 products, and because you have then got to explain the reason why they need. You've also got to convince them that what they're using, they want to switch. And getting somebody to switch a regimen that they've used to is a hard sell. But if you've got a product that meets a specific need and that works, then they're more inclined to try that, to get them into your brand. And it's also a much less costly venture. If you take the other route and decide to do your own products and everything else, then you are running into things like, you have to find a formulator, right? You have to tell them what kind of ingredients, or you have to source the all of the packaging, the labeling, do all of the design work. You're dealing with maybe 5 or 6 different people. Where if you're dealing with a contract filler, you usually have a customer service person who deals with all of this for you.
Awesome. So
So it's
we do have some activity in the chat, and I know we're coming to the top of the hour, so I want to make sure that I get some of these questions answered. And so Ann was the one on LinkedIn. Hello, thanks for joining. Pradita has made several comments. One is great information, but then she wants to know how to attend your webinar. But then she also wants to know the name of some of the companies that you're talking about, so that she can find some for her own needs. We have great product satisfies a need from Taria. Yeah. So you want to talk a little bit about where people can find you for some of the courses or some of the webinars that you
Yeah,
provide?
and they're not, and I don't do, they're not webinars. They're one-on-one. I have a colleague who's very also does a lot of the digital part of it in the execution on how, because digital is a big part of communication, and everybody, even if you run a small business, you need to have a place where you build your little tribe. That's important, where people can find you, where you can communicate with them. You know, you have your website, you have all of your things. You want your tribe in one place where you can talk to them in a way that, and give them information like this that they're looking forward to. So my workshops run as one-on-one. So you basically come to me and we discuss initially, where are you? Where do you want to be? And then we start to go through. If you're just starting at the beginning, the first seminar would be, what are you selling? So, and you'll see there's 7 different um, workshops that I offer for different area, from product development to branding to digital to regulatory. There's, so you may be a different place. You may already have a product and you want to know, well, how do I get it out? You may not have a product, but you may be thinking about a product. We can go through that. And it's designed specifically for your brand, your company. So I can't give you anything that says just do this, because I've done that and it doesn't work. People watch webinars all the time, they take classes. It's always about the execution, and the execution has to be applied to your needs, because your brand and where you are with your brand and your company is going to be different from mine. So it's not a one shop fits all. And then we develop a playbook where we put all of these information into your playbook for each thing, and some ebooks around there. So if you go on my website, DesireeReid.com, you will see a whole segment, and it's called Think Digital 360 Workshops. And you can also Google it, and it's also on my LinkedIn and on my Instagram handle. And you can see, you can book initially a 15 half an hour conversation where we kind of assess where you are and what you're doing, so that when we come to the workshop, we kind of have all of thought through where you are and what you need, and we can have a real workshop where you leave thinking, yeah, I know what to do, and I need to start here, and I need to do this, and we can just keep workshopping it until you're ready. But as I said, I find the biggest, I don't want to call it a mistake, because I think it's just where people go, is that people go and formulate a product without no idea, how much should I spend on it? Who am I competing with? You know, what should it look like? All of these things. So you can find me there, and on the other social media, and definitely in LinkedIn. And there's a calendar where you can go in and set up appointments with myself. And also, like I said, my colleague does, as an tap part of that, she does a digital sushi where we talk about how you begin to build your tribe, how you set up communication on digital, so you can begin to target your audience and get information out there.
Yeah, so I decided to put your website
Oh,
up so people can see that. So awesome. Well, I had more questions when we're
we'll have to do this
on.
again.
Yes. Yeah, but I think that what you provided was food for thought.
Yeah,
And I always find marketing and branding just intriguing, because you can't predict what's going to go do well. You can have ugly packaging and someone who has the drive, and like you said, they're out there doing all the digital and interfacing with their tribe, as you said, and they are doing great things. And the products don't necessarily have to be good, but they're selling. And so I find it to be very intriguing. And I know a lot of practitioners in the space want to know not only how to brand products, but how to brand and market themselves. Because I think we're in a new realm, or what I'm trying to do is make sure that we evolve into a new realm of thinking and elevating the
yeah,
industry. And so I want to make sure that people know where to reach you, but know that it is important in all the spaces that you.
yeah. I think it's important that anyone who, practitioners or self who have been practicing and have experience, understand that they are a brand when you start.
Yes.
Every brand started with a person who had a vision and an idea, and you are that brand, right? And the information, whether you're branding yourself now officially or not, you need to begin to think that I'm a brand. So when you create your Instagram and your Facebook page, and be conscious of what you're putting out there. Start to think about yourself as a brand, and what real information does a brand put out? Does brands put out what their CEO ate for dinner? No, they put out relevant information to their brand. And I see that, so once you're a professional person, you can become a brand, and you are a brand. So you have to be very conscious now of the things you put out there, because if you then decide to really go out and brand yourself, are you going to be putting contradictory information? What image do you want to put out there as a brand, even now that you're not technically saying you have products to sell? But I always say that people should think about these steps before you actually go into a launch. Start setting yourself up for that. Start having conversations. See what people are talking about. If you have a salon, or it's the best place to get feedback, have people give you reviews, even if it's just on a little card. I have one client, they're a bakery, and their clientels have sent them little notes, and they've kept them. All of these things matter when you decide to become a brand. If people are saying things about your brand, ask them to record it and send it to you, and ask them if you're allowed to use it. Start to wrap your mind around what matters to you for your brand. Image, performance of products. If you've got products that you're using that perform really well, take note. How do they feel? How do they smell? All of these things are so important that you don't think about them. It becomes something that you use. So when you're describing a product to a formulator, you can say, well, I like this smell, I like this texture. All of those things really matter. So you should really begin to think about them now.
Great information. You're right. I'm going to have you back. We are out of time, but I want to
Well,
thank
it was nice
everyone who
talking to
has
you all.
joined. Yeah, it's been awesome. So, I know that sometimes questions pop up, or sometimes you look at the replay. So I want to invite you to definitely go to the Our Black Hair Matters Movement Facebook page. If you aren't a member already, come on and join us. We've had a couple of questions this past week, and I try to tag one of my team members or a hair professional who I think would be advantageous for whatever situation you're in. So yeah, it's time to get the conversation going. And so once again, go to bit.ly/OBHM consults to schedule an appointment to be connected with one of my vetted team members for a free consultation. And always remember that our Black hair matters. And as always, take care and love your hair. Bye bye.